Good morning. And welcome to the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton. We're a welcoming congregation and a spiritual community. My name is John Kendrick, and I'm a facilitator for the small group ministry program here at FPC and a member of the endowment committee and a member of the choir. For those of you visiting FPC for the first time, we welcome you. We welcome you warmly. Please let us know that you're here by filling out one of our visitor information cards in the pews and hand it to an usher, or drop it on the plate, or hand it to Meg, our welcoming staff member who usually is waving at the back but is not here presently. Our minister, staff, and board are listed on the front of the order of service. Please feel free to ask me or any one of these people for more information. If you'd like a large print hymnal or an assisted listening device, please ask our ushers. Nursery care is available during the service. Older children in grades K through 5 usually attend the first part of our service and then leave for classes once a month, including today. We have a children's chapel where children begin their time in the community room. For youth programming and other information, also ask an usher or anybody else. After the service, please join us for coffee and conversation in our fellowship hall, which is down this hallway, down the stairs or elevator at the other end of the building, and have a few moments to greet and meet each other. I'd like to draw your attention to a few of the announcements in our order of service, and also invite you to check out our webpage where you can sign up for our newsletter and email alerts. In terms of announcements, we have a new Revival Coffee House coming up on Saturday, February 1st in a couple weeks. The Coffee House is just an incredible institution in this area. People love it. We have fantastic singers, performers. High Tea will be performing on Saturday, February 1st. During coffee hour, you can buy your tickets. This upcoming Saturday, January 25th, we'll have a line dancing and potluck event. I'm excited about it. I'm wearing my silver boot for Boot Scoot and Boogie. Come on down and boogie away and line dance with all of us next Saturday night. And now an announcement about the small group ministry program. Our deadline has been extended to next Sunday, January 26th. We welcome in the program new and returning people as we create new groups of 8 to 11 people. These small groups meet 2 hours once a month starting in February for a facilitated discussion with the goal of getting to know ourselves and each other more closely. No preparation is needed. We hope that you'll give it a try. Feel free to bring a friend if you'd like to. You don't have to be a member of the church to be part of the small group ministry program. And I'll just give a personal note that I've been a member of the small groups for about 4 years. I've been in a couple of different ones. Each year they change slightly. So over the course of the 4 years, I've met many, many people and gotten to build much deeper relationships. It's a great way to get to know people and get involved. So we encourage you to do so. You can register online. And if you have any questions, there will be a sign-up table for the small group program during coffee hour. And now, I'd like to introduce our minister for today. Our usual minister, the Reverend Dr. Cindy Landrum, is currently on sabbatical. So during the month of January, our sabbatical minister is the Reverend Paul Langston Daley behind me, who we are delighted to have with us today. Welcome, Paul. Paul is a part-time minister of social justice at our neighboring town of Concord. At the First Parish there. He's a practicing Buddhist. Langston Daley is a leader in ministerial ethics and ministry formation as a member of the Ministerial Fellowship Committee. And he has been active in restorative justice work and LGBTQ plus justice as an early leader in our denomination's Trans UU Professionals Group, TRUUST. And now let us come together for a time of community, singing, and worship. In your program it says greet your neighbor. We're going to do that at the end. And now the choir will stand and sing this morning's Introit.
Everybody stand, please. The covenant and affirmation will now be sung and read. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is job. This is a great thing, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I heard that you can't hear me. Is that true?
Try that.
All right. Can you hear me now? Good.
Can you do the opening words first, though?
The great turning.
Ooh, wait. Here, hang on a minute. It's all right. It's all good. We got it.
We have the wrong opening words. We are living in the greatest revolution in history, a huge, spontaneous upheaval of the entire human race. Not a revolution planned and carried out by any particular party, race, or nation, but a deep, elemental boiling over of all the inner contradictions that have ever been. A revelation of the chaotic forces inside everybody. This is not something we have chosen, nor is it something we are free to avoid.
You like the chalice first, and then we'll do the land acknowledgement. Thank you. Our chalice lighting this morning is by Vanessa Titang. She writes, "In lighting this chalice, we cast upon it our hopes and intentions for all that is positive in our minds and in our hearts. May this precious light shine on." All right, let's do the hymn first, and then we'll do the land acknowledgement. Does that sound good to everybody? We're gonna rise and sing. Rise in body and spirit and sing number 323, Break Not the Circle, and then we'll do the land acknowledgement after that. So please join us. Please be seated.
The land acknowledgement, we acknowledge that we are on unceded territories of Massachusetts, Nipmuc, Pawtucket, and Wampanoag peoples, as they are, as well as honoring and recognizing the Black and African people who unpaid and forced labor built this country and our state. We celebrate and work in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and people of color organizations leading the movement of our collective liberation in line with our UU values.
Good morning. It's good to be with you all this morning. So as I was putting this order of service together, there were several sort of emails that went back and forth saying, well, the kids are going to be in chapel. We don't need a time for all ages. But we do. We always need a time for all ages. And this morning I'm going to give you a little dramatic reading of Yertle the Turtle. On the faraway island of Solomonsound, Yertle the Turtle was king of the pond. A nice little pond. It was clean, it was neat. The water was warm, there was plenty to eat. And they were all happy, quite happy indeed. They were, until Yertle, the king of them all, decided the kingdom he ruled was too small. I am the ruler, said Yertle, of all that I see, but I don't see enough. That's the trouble with me. For this stone for a throne, I look down on my pond, but I cannot see what is in the places beyond. This throne that I sit on is too low down. It ought to be higher, he said with a frown. If I could sit higher, how much greater I'd be. What a king! I'd be ruler of all that I see. So Yertle the king lifted his hand. Yertle the Turtle King gave a command, and he ordered 9 turtles to swim to his stone, and using these turtles, he built a new throne. He made each turtle stand on the other one's back, and he piled them up in a 9-turtle stack. Then Yertle climbed up. He sat down on the pile. What a wonderful view! He could see almost a mile. All mine, cried Yertle, all the things I now rule. I am king of a cow. I am king of a mule. I'm king of a house, and what's more beyond, I'm king of a blueberry bush and a cat. I'm Yertle the Turtle, oh marvelous me, for I am the ruler of all that I see. And all through the morning he sat up there high, saying over and over, a great king am I, until long about noon when he heard a faint sigh. What's that? Snapped the king as he looked down the stack, and he saw at the bottom a turtle named Mac, just part of his throne, and this plain little turtle looked up and he said, beg your pardon, King Yertle. I've pains in my backs and my shoulders and knees. How long must we stand here, your majesty? Please. Silence, the king of the turtles shout back. I'm king, and you're only a turtle named Mac. You stay in your place while I sit here and rule. I am the king of a cow. I'm the king of a mule. I'm the king of a house and the king of a cat. But that isn't all. I'll do better than that. My throne shall be higher, his royal voice thundered. So pile up more turtles. I want about 200. Turtles, more turtles, he bellowed and brayed. And the turtles way down in the pond were afraid. They trembled, they shook, they came, they obeyed. From all over the pond, they came swimming by dozens, whole families of turtles with uncles and cousins, and all of them stepped on the head of poor Mac, and one after another they climbed up the stack. Then Yertle the Turtle was perched so high he could see 40 miles from his throne in the sky. Hooray! Shouted Yertle. I'm king of the trees, I'm king of the birds, I'm king of the bees. I'm king of the butterflies, king of the air. Ah, me, what a throne, what a wonderful chair. I am Yertle the Turtle, oh marvelous me, for I am the ruler of all that I see. Then again, from below, in that great heavy stack, came a groan from that plain little turtle named Mac. Your Majesty, please, I don't like to complain, but down here below, we're feeling great pain. I know you at the top are seeing great sights, But down here at the bottom, we too should have rights. We turtles can't stand it. Our shells will all crack. Besides, we need food. We're starving, groaned Mac. You hush up your mouth, howled the mighty King Yertle. You've no right to talk to the world's highest turtle. I rule over clouds, over land, over sea. There's nothing, no nothing that's higher than me. But while he was shouting, he saw with surprise that the moon of the evening was starting to rise up over his head in the darkening skies. What's that? Snorted Yertle. Say, what is that thing that dares to be higher than Yertle the king? I shall not allow it. I'll go higher still. I'll build my throne higher. I can and I will. I'll call some more turtles. I'll stack them to heaven. I need about 5,607. But as Yertle the Turtle King lifted his hand and started to order and give the command, that plain little turtle below in that stack, that plain little turtle whose name was just Mac, decided he'd taken enough. And he had. And that plain little turtle got a little bit mad. And that plain little turtle did a plain little thing. He burped, and his burp shook the throne of the king. And Yertle the turtle, the king of the trees, the king of the air and the birds and the bees, the king of the house and the cow and the mule, well, that was the end of the Turtle King's rule. For Yertle, the king of Solomon's fell off his high throne and went plunk in the pond. And today the great Yertle, that marvelous he, is king of the mud. That's all he can see. And turtles, of course, as all turtles are free, as turtles, and maybe all creatures should be.
Now is the time for Joys and Sorrows. I'm going to call up Hector Constanzos. I think you like it better that way.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? My name's Hector Constanzos. I'm one of the lay ministers here at First Parish Church. And as many of you know, the lay minister program is a program that helps the minister with issues and talking with the parishioners as issues arise and concerns are voiced. You can find out more about us if you go to our website. We'd also like to light two more candles, one for those joys and sorrows that have remained unspoken but are still in our heart, and finally, the cost of war. Though there is a ceasefire in the Middle East, war is still raging on.
I invite you to join me in meditation. And as I read this, I just invite you to notice a word or phrase that kind of stays with you and to hold that in the silence following the reading. This is a charm for hope. The first thing to do is to tie a string around your finger. Remember that you are not alone. Think of the ways that our best shared futures are braided inextricably with our own present and our destiny. The second thing is to untie the string and let the knots fall away and the tightness fall away. Let the burden of bleakness roll off your shoulders. Resistance on these opaque horizons only requires one source of strength, one ray of light. Remember that persistence doesn't require all the answers up front, only one. Fortunately for all of us, we have one response: to remain together through awkward times and happy ones. We remember and we find our resolve in one another. Amen. And blessed be. I invite you to just hold a moment of silence. Blessed be the silence. I invite you now to rise in body and spirit and join in our next hymn, number 155, Circle Round for Freedom.
Our reading today is by and of James Luther Adams. James Luther Adams was a fellowshipped Unitarian minister who was in Germany during the late 1920s and early 1930s. He witnessed the rise of Adolf Hitler and fascism in Germany. He shared with us much of what he learned in his many writings and lectures. Here is one important thing he learned. During his so-named conversion experience in Germany, Adams said he gained the conviction that a decisive institution of the viable democratic society is the voluntary association. Adams characterizes his experiences in Nazi Germany as inducing a kind of conversion in him that brought about his plunge into a host of civic-minded, voluntary associational activities when he returned to the United States. He claims such associations are a medium for the assumption of civic responsibility. Adams further argued a religious congregation is a voluntary association that attends to the psychological well-being of its members, as well as the organization and direction of their collective behavior for promoting social, political, and economic change in the wider world. For Adams, voluntary associations are organizations to which we freely have chosen to belong, rather than those into which we have been born, such as our birth family, community, and political state. Adams insisted that this is in voluntary associations that we gain the power to negotiate our own internal feelings with others, and also to gain power as a group to negotiate changes in the non-voluntary associations that rule our lives. Religious voluntary associations work in both private and in both the private psychological sphere of the individual, and also work with the individual as utterly a social being, someone who is known by their group affiliations. This is why Adams says, quote, By their groups shall we know them. Adam concludes, we learn how to negotiate the tensions between our inner lives and our external behavior in voluntary associations. Now we'll have a
Good morning, everyone. I'm Susie O'Brien. I'm the co-chair. Oh. Is that a better? Oh, yeah, that's good. Okay. Good morning. I'm Susie O'Brien, co-chair of the Support for Asylum Seekers Task Force. I want, first of all, thank everybody for the generosity that's been shown during this month of our plate sharing. It's really been incredible, and you can be sure that we will use that money wisely to help the families that we're helping. I want to introduce Francio Joseph, who is a young man. His family is over here. His partner, Juvie. Where's the baby? Oh. Their new baby Jason, and 2.5-year-old Brianna, who's making friends with, just blanked on her name, Ami. Francio's just going to talk. Francio is originally from Haiti and spent time in Chile, and then came here first to Florida and now to Worcester. And he's seeking asylum, has an attorney who's working for him, and he's gone through a lot and doing an incredible job moving their life forward. So I'd like to introduce him to just say a few words.
Good morning, everybody. Okay. Everybody hear me? Okay. My name is Francio Joseph. The reason I'm just coming here today, I'm just want to say thank you for every family and every single people. Especially, I want to say thank you, Mrs. Susanna, Mr. Roy, and Mrs. Diane. I remember in the day I'm just living here, but in Worcester, I'm just living in Worcester. I remember the day I see Mrs. Susanna and Mr. Roy and the place where I am for help me. I can't explain that too much because my English is not so good, but I'm sure. Yeah, I try to say thank you everybody for helping me, because Mrs. Diane, Mrs. Susanna, and Mr. Roy helped me in different time. Especially, I remember the day I can't pay my phone, and then for me and my girlfriend, above just take decision for pay that for me for a long time. I wanna say thank you for that. Thank you so much.
Our collection will now be joyfully given and received. How many of you are anxious? Can't get my hand up fast enough, right? There's a lot to be anxious about. The chaos is coming. And we know this. We've been through it once before. So we have at least a little bit of kind of prep for what might be coming. I want to start with a quote from Heather Cox Richardson. She writes, "Democracy is a moral position. Defending the rights of human beings to control their own lives is a moral position. Treating everyone equally before the law is a moral position. Insisting that everyone has the right to a say in their government is a moral position." So, just to be clear, this conversation we're having today is a moral conversation. And I want to talk a little bit about this anxiety that we're all kind of carrying and the what do we do with it, right? Like, how do we find a way to kind of not just check out, because we can't afford to check out. So there are ways that we can support and sustain our democracy, even now. And as an organizer, I've been doing organizing for about 35 years now, and there's lots of different models for how to think about the world and how to think about society and change and that kind of thing. And the thing that organizers are always dealing with is this tension between the world as it is and the world as it should be. And many of our ideological differences are about how we see the world as it should be, right? So if you've read Project 2025, you know that's one view of the world as it should be. There are other views, one of which I hold, and I believe the majority of Unitarian Universalists hold this view as well, and that is a world of drawing the circle wider, of including more people, of being more open and welcoming and inclusive and generous. That's the model that I embrace, the one that includes pluralism. It includes interdependence and generosity. It includes justice and equity and transformation. And all of that has love at the center. Those are the values that I hold and the world that I want to see. So as we think about this tension, I want to just think about how do we move the world how do we move to the world as it should be, okay? So in the maybe 2000, early 2000s, I learned this model in organizing called the three-sphere model. Felix, if you can throw that up on the, all right. So this model stuck with me, and part of the reason it stuck with me is because it's really simple, but it's incredibly profound, okay? There's a lot to this model. It doesn't look like it, but there is. So we've got these three spheres, these three circles, and if you imagine that society kind of holds these three spheres. There's the civic sphere, the market sphere, and the government sphere. I'm going to start with the civic sphere. The civic sphere is the sphere that James Luther Adams talked about. The sphere that is voluntary organizations, churches, unions, bridge clubs, bowling teams, sports leagues, anything that kind of holds civic society together falls into this civic sphere, okay? This sphere is primarily relational. Most of what goes on in this sphere is about how do we connect with each other, how do we learn from each other, how do we engage and find compromise, okay? Let's see, what else do I want? Oh, this is the sphere when James Luther Adams said, by your groups you shall know them. This is the sphere. So the groups that you join are how we know who you are and the world that you wish to see coming into being. Okay. The second sphere is the government sphere. This sphere is just what it sounds like, right? This is our elected bodies. This is all of our law crafting, policy making, legal decisions, that kind of stuff, the branches of government. And the role of government is to support the people and the society in which those people live. This sphere is responsible for both regulation of the individual and regulation of the market. Okay? It's responsible for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's government's job to mediate between the transactional impulse of the market and the relational impulse of civic society. Okay? It's most effective when people can influence the outcomes through elections and balancing corporate and personal needs. And then we have the market sphere. This sphere is designed to create both goods and services for society and jobs for society in order to be able to create those goods and services for society. It includes innovation and ideas about moving forward, and it's made up of corporations that are essentially designed to make a profit. The impact of the civic sphere is both in terms of the market, what it sells, but also in terms of how it employs. Okay? So it's sort of a dual role. And I just want to note that in American capitalism, the market sphere is designed to make a profit at all costs, and CEOs can be sued if their business doesn't make a profit in any given quarter. Which means the role of market is to externalize all expenses. Everything that's going to cost money gets pushed off the books and into somebody else's pocket, and everything that's going to make money is brought in. Okay, does that make sense? This is really an important understanding for how the market works. Markets make money by externalizing expenses and getting somebody else to pay it. Okay? The market sphere is transactional. It doesn't care about relationships. It's only about the transaction. All right? Like any good three-legged thing, this only stands up if it's in balance. The social contract of the 1960s, and now, I'm just going to caveat this by saying I could go all the way back to the beginning of the founding of the country. I could probably go back further than that, but I have to pick a point, and I only have 15 minutes. So I'm starting in the 1960s. Okay, so hang with me. So in the 1960s, we had an agreement between the automakers and the auto workers called the social contract. This generated the greatest wealth in white America, in the white middle class, in the history of the country. It was important. It was a balance. And in the 1970s, the late 1970s, the spheres begin to shift. For those of you who lived through that election, the 1980 election, you know this. The government sphere came under attack first, quickly followed by a decline in the civic sphere. How many of you remember Ronald Reagan's famous statement, "Government is not the solution to the problem, government is the problem"? Yeah, right? You remember that. Keep this in mind. They imagined a different world as it should be. They dramatically cut taxes that funded government and slashed budgets, including federal assistance to the states, by 60%. So if you wonder why states are having trouble paying their bills, it's because in the 1980s, 60% of the funding that was given by the federal government was removed. Much of that was for education. They also began a process of deregulation that has continued to this day. Also in the 1980s, for those of you who remember this, Reagan did a thing that undermined unions with the greatest success since the 1930s. He fired every air traffic controller in the country because they were striking for better wages and better working conditions. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we actually are having a crisis with our air traffic controllers now. That move signaled the end of government support for unions, and unions have been in decline ever since, until the last 4 years, really. Challenges to environmental law, criminal codes, tax codes, and anything that might impinge upon corporate profit making has been eliminated. So that the market, the last 4 decades has shown an unprecedented growth in the market. And these changes in government occurred, as these changes in government occurred, the market sphere is also impacting and influencing civic life. How many of you work for Digital Equipment Corporation? A few of you, okay. How many of you work for GE? Nobody here, okay. Some places I go, there are people who work for GE. GE and Digital Equipment Corporation were examples of some of the best growth that we had in this country. There was a huge middle management that was based on sort of teamwork and working together to create the products that they were making. What happened in the 1980s was records of mergers and acquisitions, okay? Now, DEC is a story in and of itself, and I'm not going to go down that road, but the idea is that these mergers and acquisitions created an opportunity for markets to continue to grow and for civic society to continue to be impinged upon. Because what happens in those mergers and acquisitions is you and you get fired, and you have to do their 2 jobs for the same pay that you had before, and now you're working 3 times as much. You don't have energy to do anything except maybe come home and binge watch a couple of things on TV, and then you're off to bed and you're back doing it again in the morning. Right? We lived through this, we remember this. This actually happened, and we're still feeling the effects today. Anybody who kept their job was happy to have it, and they would do anything they could to keep it because you couldn't get a job. Those huge layoffs made it really hard for families to provide. They had less time for outside activities, and they were more exhausted when the time they did have was available. Now, couple this with the education reforms begun under the Reagan and Bush administrations. They went through this process of externalizing activities. Kids no longer have music, gym, art. All of that is now externalized and must be provided by parents outside of the classroom, outside of the school hours, which means now you have less time anyway, but now you got to truck your kids to a place, and that's if you can afford it. The policies that cut and starve public schools continue, and the starvation-induced decline justify the use of school vouchers. Vouchers, same thing. This externalization means more family and personal time had to be used for transporting kids, for all these other things, and we have less and less time to do anything. And I just got to say, the idea of applying market concepts to government is the antithesis of what government is about. When government uses the business model of externalization to cut costs, someone pays those costs. And it's often the people who can least afford it. And it's about to get more imbalanced. And all of this leads us to this sense of like, what are we going to do? Is there anything we can do? I'm just shutting off the news and walking away. Because this is where we are. The human response is frustration, fear, anxiety, and depression. The market sphere controls government. When Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez got into the House, one of the things she said was, I had no idea that our orientation was going to be led by the lobbyists rather than government officials. We're kept busy. We're kept anxious. We don't feel like we can do anything. And I also want to say that the government sphere continues to be controlled. If you've read Project 2025, you know that the Heritage Foundation created that. If you're paying attention at all to what's going on in the states, you know that ALEC has bills across the country in almost every state. And these are super conservative, really dangerous bills. And we can resist. We can resist. By strengthening the civic sphere, we can put market back to its right size, and government back to its right size, and push market back into its place. But the only way we're going to do that is by engaging and strengthening civic society. The last 40 years has seen the atomization of our civic society. We don't have time to get together. I grew up in Stowe. I remember my parents going to like Scottish dance things with the risings and the Stowtown Festival and all of the things that happened here that were community oriented, that brought us together, that helped us to mediate between our own personal needs and the needs of the community. I remember my parents going to things. I remember being in town meetings. I remember listening to conversations about what do we do with the kids, what's happening in the schools, how do we, my parents talked about that with their peers. We don't do that anymore. Or we do a lot less of it, and part of that is because we have less time to do it. This congregation is amazing. I want you to know that you're amazing. What's your name, fella in the back there that did the Joys and Sorrows? What's your name? Roy. Roy, thank you. You listed all the things. You listed all the groups. You listed all the voluntary ways in which we can connect and be together. You guys have a bridge club here, right? There's line dancing coming up. I saw a thing in the list for an art. People were looking for, let's get together and do art. This is what we need, more of this. This is what we need, opportunities to get together and talk. Because when we're sitting there doing art, we're not just talking about the art. We're talking about the world. We're talking about the things that matter to us. We're talking about the ways that we can engage and connect and learn and compromise and find ways to move together in our communities. And it requires getting together. And it requires having those conversations. And it requires being curious. Now, 15 million people who voted in the 2020 election didn't vote in this election. Those are the people we need to talk to. We don't need to talk to the people who voted for Donald Trump. But I do think we need to talk to the people who are in the middle, who really are struggling just as we are to understand the best way forward, to find ways to support and sustain our democracy, to find ways to fight the fascist system that is about to be put in place. There is still hope. But the only way that hope exists is if we can continue to be curious, to engage with one another, and to care about our society. And that means that in that spare time, even though we're tired, rather than binge watching one more thing on Netflix, we're going to go to line dancing and connect with people. Now, some of you may just be here for social reasons, and that's okay. But I want you to know that those social reasons are more than just social. You're building the democracy by being part of those social communities. It's really important. You're throwing your lot in with this progressive community who cares about the future. We love that. We're glad you're here. And I just want to close with the words of Reverend Soto. Resistance on these opaque horizons only requires one source of strength, one ray of light. Remember that persistence doesn't require all the answers up front, only one. And fortunately for all of us, we have one response: to remain together through awkward times and happy ones. We remember, and we find resolve in one another. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. And I invite you to join in singing Fire of Commitment number 1028. all sound really good. Our closing words are by the writer Octavia Butler. She writes, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change." Please be seated for the postlude. Sorry, I don't know your order of service. Now, please be seated for the postlude.